Hey everybody, on this episode of AFTERBUZZ TV Spotlight On, we're getting up close and personal with the writer, director, producer, and star of The Wedding Invitation, Rainy Kerwin. Let's do it.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Oh, look at that. Leftover Cuties playing us in to this episode of AFTERBUZZ TV Spotlight On. This is the show where we get up close and personal with all the people that are responsible, either in front of or behind the camera, to bringing you all that great entertainment that you get to watch on the big screen, at home on your TV, or maybe on one of your mobile streaming devices. I'm your host, Frank Moran. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HappyGoJackie. Now, during my brief open before the show started there, I listed basically all these descriptions of Rainy Kerwin here. She, writer, director, producer, and star. She took total control of the film that she wanted to make. We're going to find all about that, all about her life, everything in the next hour. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rainy Kerwin. Oh, my goodness.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, but the pleasure's all mine. So we played the Leftover Cuties there. Yeah, smile big.
I do every time I hear it. Something about that song. Somebody told me about that song. And I think of all, because we have 23, or not original songs, but local artists mostly in the film. And I didn't have the opening song. I thought I did, and then we couldn't get it. And so I just reached out to them cold and said, this is a little trailer. This is the film. Is there any way you would consider, letting us use your song? And they wrote back and said, yeah, do it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, as not only just the writer, director, but producer, when it comes to finding the music for a film, how hard is that? Are you as you're writing some scenes, do you have some songs already popping in your head? Do you kind of do that more once you get into post?
This is really interesting because I'm a first-time filmmaker, and when you do that, you can't know everything, and you shouldn't, or you wouldn't start. That's my theory. But because you just wear so many hats, and it was not something that I thought about. But a couple weeks ago, I was on a panel at the Society of Composers and Lyricists, and I was asked about the score in it and music in it, and did I think about that, and did that, influence the writing in any way for scenes? And it really didn't. I have other projects that it has, but this one I was always going for this fun, big, studio kind of romp on a micro budget, right? So I didn't think about it so much as I had a feel for what I wanted, but nothing really specific. So I had to put all that together afterwards, which was challenging to say the least. I mean, even to get a little bit farther in it, I had never really... I'd heard score. Listen, I love movies. I'm obsessed with movies. I've felt score more than I've ever heard it. But so when I went to score the film, I was floored. I was floored because I had to temp score it, meaning I had to go listen to score from hundreds of movies and take those pieces and put them in a temporary way so that my composer would know what I wanted. So yeah, this was a huge challenge for me, who's very musically challenged. I just like what I'm listening to.
Now, I understand when you do like the spotting session with your composer, where you're kind of going through that, and you've already got what? Because I've had her described as like basically the composer kind of sits the director on the couch, and it's almost like a psychiatrist, kind of just trying to draw out what even they're not really kind of expressing maybe in thoughts, but to find out what they need for this film. Right.
And this was interesting because a lot of this I had not thought of until we sat down. But I knew the feel that I wanted, but I didn't know that that's a string and that's a clarinet. And, I didn't know that that was not my language. That's why I really temp scored everything. But yeah, a spotting session, you sit down and you say, there shall be score from this frame, this minute to this frame, to this minute to this frame. And then we're going to pull it out. And then we're going to have a song here. Then we're going to have nothing here. And I have a very musical film. I have a lot of music in it. I just wanted to give it that kind of fun feel. And to me, music and score does that. But we sat down, and it's not fancy. It wasn't a couch. It was a rolling chair like this. And we sat in his loft, which was lovely. And, it's just a giant Excel spreadsheet that he labels everything. So we would have themes that would repeat, moment of despair, hopeful but not. Like he had all these really fun, his name is Duncan Thumb and David Burtock are the two composers. And so we would sit there and come up with these really kind of fun little ways and color code, like green. The green theme would come back. So that score could repeat to some degree throughout the film, and it would kind of give it that cohesive thread as we watch this film, and it built it. You know, it really built the film.
So, as somebody that you've kind of described, similar to Lucy in some respects, the character that you play in The Wedding Invitation is the idea of the highlighters, post-it notes, organization.
Yeah.
So, when the composer says, you know what, I'm going to pull up the sweet Excel sheet, we're going to start putting everything, are you like, now you are speaking my language?
Yes, yes, because I love Excel spreadsheets. But at the same time, I mean, he just saw me go white when we finished putting, like, because they're like music cues, you know, and there was so many of them, and he's like, it's okay, calm down. And then he showed me, he like held my hand and he showed me what it should look like at the end when it's all filled in. I'm like, okay. But they even said that, David and Duncan even said, like, this was a very heavily scored film. I think we had about 25 pieces of score in it, so that's a lot for a film.
So what's it like when you have that spotting session and then you're done and then they come back to you and say, all right, here's what we think, and you finally get to see their music married with your pictures?
Yeah, it was so good. It was so good because, you know, as you know, score is meant, taking score from a different movie and putting it in yours, it's not ideal, but it actually sometimes can work because it's like, you know, there's moments that it can hit. And mine was comedy, so we could, you know, move it around to have it hit. But then when somebody writes specific score for your film, I mean, that's amazing, because I felt like all of the comedy was punctuated, you know, and often what I would do, because I don't have notes on, like, this works or this feels maybe a little too fast or too slow. I mean, that's my lame language when talking about music. But what I would sometimes do is, my little trick is I like to pull music out for a funny moment. Like, there's a totally inappropriate scene in bed. We call it the mustache scene.
Yes.
There's that moment where he says that line, and I pull the music out right before that. And I feel like, you know, that's when the music is so great, because the absence of it sometimes is equally as good as having the music in there.
Was it hard, because we're using temp music? I can understand you can kind of get married, even though you know it's temporary. You
married
get
to your temp, or temp love. It's the term.
Was it easy to kind of like put that aside, and then once you get to hear the new music that is brought in for your film specifically, like, oh wow, this is even better than I thought?
It was. There's on occasion, there was a couple times when it wasn't, because because it's an 80s prom themed wedding, and we had the girls dancing to a song that I danced to when I was a kid. I mean, maybe it was like late 80s, trying not to age myself, but let's be honest. But you know, that was a song that I was always going to have in this film. That was going to be the song in the prom, and we couldn't get it. Like, we could not afford that song. But what we got was this really cool 80s band, or that made their own 80s music, but nowadays. So so it was great to find things like that. But for the most part, I was blown away with the score, because it just was tailored to my film.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, speaking of that, because you're editing the film based off the temp music, and then once the composers come back, are they composing it to how you've edited it to the temp music, or once they give you that music, you kind of tweak some of your scenes to kind of fit that music?
No, once we picture locked, we didn't change anything. Okay. So yeah, and there were very few moments, like if you're cutting a trailer, you can't do that. You have to change the edit to fit the music sometimes. Although I have to say, Alexis Grapsis, who did the music edit on this, it's amazing what he can do with things, to just the way he extends a beat, or it's amazing that it actually works so well, even though we already have the edit down, that he can still manipulate the music so that it actually really hits. But yeah, for the most part, nothing was recut based on music, so they have a job to do, you know. It's tough.
So now, to jump back, we got a little on the wedding invitation, but let's jump back just a little bit about you. Are a native Angelino?
I always stutter when I answer that question. Yes. Sounds like a lie's about to come out. No, I was born in Los Angeles. My father was a film editor, and my mom was from Canada, and they met hitchhiking through Europe. And
wow.
Yes, fell in love and came to LA and had my sister and I. And then when I was 3 and my sister was 5, we went to Winnipeg. At the time, against my will, because it was freezing. I since have fallen in love with Winnipeg, but so I grew up in Winnipeg. Winnipeg's my hood. Yeah.
So, as somebody, your father, a film editor.
Yeah. He did commercials and stuff.
Okay.
Mostly, yeah. Like he wore the glove, like a cutter.
Oh, like wow. Old school, yes.
Putting X-Acto knife or something. Doing a little plug for X-Acto.
So was basically just movies and media just in your blood right from the beginning?
You know what I think happened? Because there is a lot of that now in Winnipeg, but not when I was growing up. But what happened when I was young, my cousin, Scott Curtis, I don't think he's ever heard this, but he lived in LA, and he was on every show you could be on in the 80s. Like, he was like 5 years old, and he was on Santa Barbara and Highway to Heaven, and he was friends with Leonardo DiCaprio, who played Stinky on one of those sitcoms from the 80s.
Is it Growing Pains?
Growing Pains, yeah. So he was on all of these shows, and so I would watch these shows at a very young age and I want to do what Scott's doing. So I think that's where the initial seed was planted, and then from there on out, I just talked my mom into signing me up for every kind of acting class I could in Winnipeg, and I started out doing local commercials at Sea Candy TV in Winnipeg. That was my little start. Yeah. You know what's funny? Actually, to bring it full circle, I'm doing a road trip to Winnipeg for the next 6 weeks, and when I get there, I'm doing 3 TV interviews, and one is at the old Sea Candy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so just a few years later, I came back.
So when you're doing that, is it what you thought it was going to be just by watching your cousin on TV? It's like, oh yeah, this is really cool. Or is it different than what you thought it was going to be?
No, I was incredibly unsuccessful for a very long time. I mean, I got on a bus when I was 18 after graduating. We call it grad back home, not prom, but, basically my prom. And 4 days later, I was in LA. And, I think of the business as a triangle. And it's not that you can't move around. Certainly you can, but I really plugged in at the bottom, and so we're sort of at the bottom. As I came as an actor, you're scrounging for that one-line audition. It's not even like you're scrounging for a role. You're just excited to get one-line audition. And so I attacked it like a business, kind of very desperately. And I didn't have any, I did a couple independent films and stuff and some little TV, but I didn't have any success. And then my breaking point is I had an audition for that 70s show for one line. The line was thank you, and I didn't get a call back. And I had worked so hard to get that audition. I was doing showcases. I'd become friends with the casting director, who was G. Charles Wright at the time. And I went in for that audition, and how bad was I, right? I couldn't have,
Yeah.
Well... Who knows? Maybe I was terrible, but I didn't get a call back, and that was my falling down point, and I just realized something's wrong. I've been here a couple years, and I'm struggling so much, and I don't, it was so hard to, I must have worked 6 months to get that audition, So I looked at those people that were successful, that had created their own vehicles, like Nia Vardalos with My Big Fat Greek Wedding, who's also from Winnipeg, or Rocky or Swingers, or all these people, and I was like, I think they're all great, and maybe they would very much have careers today if they hadn't created their own, but that ignited them. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, oh, naively, well, I'll do that. I'll just do that. So I started to write knowing nothing. And at the time, I had a Word, I just had Word. I didn't even have Final Draft, which is the editing software. Yeah. And I just tab, character name, tab, line of action, and so I just started writing, and that's how this all kind of came to be, out of frustration and necessity.
So when you are growing up and you want to pursue this as a career, with your dad, kind of at least be related to the industry, was he like, ooh, Rainy, this might not be the wisest choice?
Yeah. It's so funny because it was just Father's Day, and he and I just had this conversation because, he always said, okay, but you're gonna also be a lawyer, right? Right? You're gonna be a lawyer, and then you do this for fun on weekends. You'll do a play.
That's right. Yeah. But try cases during the week, and then shoot some stuff on the weekend.
And then I can be dramatic in front of the court, like I love to be. But we had this conversation, and maybe I shouldn't say this because he's listening, but. When I was not going to play Lucy this round. This film was set up very differently to be a $10 million film, and it all fell apart 7 years ago. But so this round, I wanted to get a name for the lead role of Lucy, and I was going to play Ryan, which Camille Guadi killed it. Nobody could touch that. The thought of me even playing it compared to her, no, she's amazing. But I was directing it, and I was going to play Ryan, and then we couldn't get the name. I'm a first-time writer or director. Nobody was giving us their name actors. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I wrote it for me. I know how Lucy's meant to be played. I think that will eliminate a step in translation when it comes to directing. And I, worked for the last 8 years as an acting coach and director at an acting conservatory, and so I'm really comfortable working with actors, and I think I'm pretty good at knowing if I got it or not. Do I need another take? I'm like, I'm gonna take Lucy. And my dad was like, okay, but then you need to get somebody else to direct it. You can't do both. The rules tell you cannot do both. And we were just laughing about that on Father's Day. I was like, I did it.
Yeah, broke all the rules. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Now, is your sister, she involved in the entertainment business?
No, but she was. She used to be. She used to do wardrobe, so she was on Glitter and Chicago, but no, she said not for me, and she lives a very spiritual life. So yeah, she went a complete opposite direction.
Is she up in Winnipeg still, or is she elsewhere?
She's elsewhere.
She's elsewhere, just elsewhere. When you're living a spiritual life, you are elsewhere.
No, she was in LA recently, but she's a traveler and a lover and a healer and just an amazing spirit. So she just, wanders in a great way.
So when you finished grad, up there in Canada,
grad,
yes. Was there any point where you're thinking, maybe I'll go to New York first, or LA was always your go-to destination?
Well, I think I don't know well, I do know what the draw is. I've loved LA from day one. And if I'm ever having a bad day, I just look up at a palm tree. That's always been, because I was in Winnipeg and I so fiercely felt like I needed to be in LA from a very young age. I was obsessed with LA. So I was always coming to LA, but we would come back here every 2 or 3 years. We'd drive down from Winnipeg.
But how long is that drive?
It's, I think it's 40 straight hours.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, maybe it's a little less. Maybe it's 30 straight hours. It's long, but I mean, this is what we did. We grew up camping, no shoes, in our bathing suits all summer. This was like, well, because it's 10 months of winter, so the minute you can put your bathing suit on, they have to pry it off me at the end of the season.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like when you're used to growing up in a cold climate, where it's like 50 degrees seems like the summer. So it's like bust out the shorts, the swimsuit. We're doing it. When everybody that's used to the warm climate, like, no, 50. What are you kidding? No,
Right.
Give me my sweatshirt.
And I'm calculating as you say this because I think I'll always be a Celsius girl. No, I'm good if it's like 100. I know what 100 is, but when it gets to cooler, I'm like 50. Okay, so double it and add 20. Yes. Nice. And 0 is 0, which is freezing, which is great.
That's right.
For
I
me.
like that. 0 and 100, we're great. I can deal with all those. Yeah. So did you have stops along the way that it was like, anytime we go do this trip, we always stop, like say Portland, Seattle, or?
No, we never stopped. I mean, Winnipeg is central, so we'd always come down through Colorado.
Okay.
But we wouldn't stop. My dad was a maniac. He would just drive straight.
Oh.
I mean, we would pull over and he would sleep for a couple hours and he would just drive. But we've done it so many times. My mom and him would switch off, or I did it. I've done it a couple times since I've been here. I drove down the first time. I'm about to do it again.
You're gonna drive? I'm
driving back to Winnipeg in July. Yeah.
Will you be doing stops, or are you gonna try to channel your father and just like, I'm going straight through?
No, I'm not gonna channel Rainy Kerwin. I'm gonna stop a lot. This is my after 3 years of like 7 days a week on this film, I'm gonna do nothing or everything, or I'm going with my dog. And my uncle Frank is coming with me until Colorado, so we'll
Nice.
He'll help out and keep me awake. But we're just gonna do nothing. Like we don't know. We're just gonna stop if there's a place to swim. Like that's my goal.
Not a bad. That seems like
Yeah.
it's always nice when you don't have like an objective, the ultimate objective, but along the way you can just do what you feel like. If you want to stop somewhere, you can.
Yes, and I've never gone through life that way. I always have an objective. I mean, I think because I've been out here so long that it was always to get to the finish line, and this certainly isn't the finish line, but it's a finish line. Like I feel like I've always, in a heartfelt moment, I think I've always personally had so much fear that I've always moved the goalpost. Like I wanted to be an actor. Okay, that's really hard. I'll just make it harder because I'm about to win or fail at that. So then I'll write. Oh, okay, then I'll produce, then I'll direct, and then at some point, like the goalpost is at the end, and you have to then make the movie. Like okay, I'm gonna make the whole movie. And so I feel like I'm at a finish line, I guess, along the way where I can take 6 weeks off.
No, absolutely. Well, there are those people that feel when they do a marathon, there are people that run it once and say, you know what, that was great. I never need to do it again. And there's others say, I love the challenge.
Yeah.
Sign me up for the next one.
Yeah, I'm not going to run a marathon.
No, not another. Oh, all right.
But I might make another movie. Yeah.
So when you moved down here, you mentioned your uncle that you're going to be starting this road trip off of. Was he living here in Los Angeles?
So I used to have some family here, and they have pretty much, with the exception of Uncle Frank, picked up and left. So they're all in Bend. So I have my Canadian family, which I hung out with, and we do the cottage and that fun part. And then I had my American family who don't know each other, completely separate. But they've mostly left and gone to Bend. So I have godparents here, which I'm very close to. So I get to see them a lot. So I think it's, LA is a hard city to start out in. It's not like New York where you're on the subway and you can make a friend or have contact or be with people. LA, you're in your car, and it's I think people take a couple years to settle down. You come to LA with a dream and a mission, and we're on a little bit, and I'm guilty of that too, of trying to be this person or persona of what I think I need to be. But I think after a couple years, you settle in and you find what I call my family. And my friends are my family, So, and I think because nobody really has family here, you need that, you need to find those people. So I have Uncle Frank and Hawk and Molly, and I have my friend family, who I couldn't have made this film without.
Hawk, that's an awesome name.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. Big fan of that name. So as you start, you've been teaching in the conservatory for 8 years.
Yeah.
What led to your involvement in getting involved with that conservatory?
A friend of mine, a good friend, my family, Casey, was teaching there, and she's like, I think you would like this. I think you would just like to do this. And at the time I was writing, and I didn't want to wait tables anymore. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And I fell in love with it. I could do that for the rest of my life, and my cup would be full. It has been the most amazing experience. Gary Spatz, who runs the conservatory, is just a beautiful spirit, and people just gravitate to him. But it's grown and grown. I mean, they have 6 studios, and it's called the Playground, and all of my family and friends have come from that. But what it taught me was, because it's mostly teens was kind of my bag, but it's children to teens, and it gave me permission to get in there and figure out how to fix a scene. So even though I don't have a film school background, and I'm not as much a technical director, with actors I feel really confident. And because I worked with over 1,000 actors in 8 years, it gives you that ability to go in and know how to talk to actors rather than give them line readings. And I think that's really important because I'm a huge believer in intention and truth in any scene. I don't care if it's comedy or drama. That's where I come from. And I feel like you can tell in 1 second if somebody's saying a line or actually going after their intention. And that's the only thing I ever focus on as a director. It's not how you're saying it or how you're saying it. It's what are you getting? Because I say mimic life, and in life we all want something. I want something from you right now, and you want something from me, right? And so how I'm saying things, using my hands, we're always after something. And I think when you put that into acting, it really, it makes it so much easier.
How did your acting change? Because certainly by coaching and helping with students, certainly that influences you too. So how does your acting change since you worked with these students at the conservatory?
Well, I think it gave me a confidence as an actor. And I think you become very judgmental, as you need to be in these moments to see what's working and to see what's not working. But it's amazing what you learn. I've always heard of actors saying, oh, I would go in for sessions or casting where they were casting, and I would run the camera, and I learned so much from that. Just watching people walk in or seeing who was believable or not and why. I feel like it's the exact same thing spending 8 years in a studio, watching kids and teens try to figure it out and watching them go through their process of it. That's I think it changed in a big way. I actually credit the Playground in a massive way that I don't think that I would have taken on directing this film had I not had that experience and that just kind of the fearlessness of doing it, having done it on a daily basis.
I'm curious when it comes to directing a film, because there are more like actors, directors, more technical directors. But I also feel like if you're hiring a great crew, the technical side, at least in my opinion, seems like it would take care more of itself.
And that's what I did.
Yes. Then that way you can just really focus on dealing with the actors and getting the best performance from them.
Yeah. And my DP was amazing. We had, so this is the first feature I've shot. We shot a little trailer, a little sizzle trailer right before we shot this for the next, my next feature. And so we got to know each other on that, and we just hit it off. We speak the same language. On set we high five and call each other dude. It's so much fun. Her name is Alicia Robbins, and she's an amazing DP. So she was so helpful, and she knew that, so I never had to put on airs about having to pretend. I'd be like, no, I don't get this, explain this. Okay, got it, great, then let's not do that, or let's do that. So she had my back, and I had a producing partner too, Sage Scroop, who had my back too, and that she sat through all of my rehearsals so that when I was on camera, she was when I was in front of the camera, she was behind the camera. So what I would do is I would roll. Oftentimes I just cut myself, I would roll till I felt like I had it, and then I would just watch playback. So I watched playback on absolutely everything. But it's a challenge. But the thing I did though to kind of get over that challenge was I rehearsed the day players. I rehearsed everybody, because it's comedy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you don't understand it, if you don't understand the beat in the moment and what you're going for, it's not going to work ever. So that all needed to be worked out. So Camille and Christina Uloa, who plays Nectar, they spent many, many hours at my house working through these moments. So we would get to set. I mean, and we're an indie film, right? So we're doing somewhere between 5 and 10 pages a day, And so we had a system where we would block, light, rehearse, shoot, and we would go in that order. And rehearsing was working in the blocking and what we rehearsed, during the rehearsal and in prep. So we had to be on, and there wasn't time to work this stuff out. I mean, I would love to be shooting a page a day. Like, it's the dream.
That is. Now, do you feel like the crew, do they want a director that can really speak their language, or they're fine with a director that knows what they want, but is fine to ask questions and look for that expertise from those people that you've hired?
Yeah, well, I have to say the crew on this was amazing. It was an all-female crew, and everybody was so supportive, and energetically, that was so helpful to me. I don't know if they know that, but they were on board. So if I had an idea or I wanted this or that, there was production design, which is Sean Graves, killed it. I would say, can we do this? And they would, everybody was on my side always. Like, because we'd worked out, the script had been vetted and we'd worked that out. So everybody was just there to kind of make the vision come alive. And because this was not a huge budget, nobody was there. I mean, everyone was being paid, but nobody was there just for the money.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody had to be there. They were taking pay cuts to be there. So it just felt like energetically we were all moving in the same direction, and they were really supportive of it.
That's got to be nice to be able to have a crew that wants to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to like, yeah, all right, whatever. Yeah,
No, I
sure,
know.
Rainy. Okay,
Yeah.
fine, whatever.
Especially when you're going overtime. We did try to have good food. It was advice that you
That's-
got to have good food.
Yes.
No pizza. No pizza. Yeah.
So now, as you mentioned, that you originally had this several years ago. You'd written this film and tried to shop it around, and a lot of male men that would read it, it's like, not really interested in
Yeah.
getting behind this film and supporting it. That I don't understand why. It seems so frustrating to me that men would just be kind of like, I don't understand this.
Yeah, it was. It was really frustrating because, I was a first-time everything, unsuccessful back then, but a lot of it came together so easily. To some degree, we didn't get it over the finish line with funding, but I gave it to this producer, and she loved it, and we went out to a director at Gersh, and she loved it. She was going to be in town and wanted to meet with us, and so we had an AP on board and a sales agent, and everyone signed on, and we had an A-list casting director, and so it grew and grew and grew. But not by design, but it was all women that had come to it, and we basically we would hear that it just, you couldn't have a female-driven film because women meant very little in the foreign market, and foreign market at the time, it's similar-ish depending on the film, but was for this budget film was about 60% of sales, and since women meant less in the foreign market, it was going to be harder to get the money back. So, and because 95% of venture capital in this country goes to men or male-driven companies. I mean, we had a little bit of an uphill battle, and it seemed like there weren't any female financiers that we'd gone out to or that we knew of. It seems like all these men were like, I don't get it. I don't resonate with the story, and I don't think this is gonna see any money. And so it just kind of like fell apart.
So as a writer and an actor, and then you start writing the script, and then you want to actually start making this film, getting into finding venture capital, fundraising, crowdsourcing. How much experience did you have about this world that you were kind of stepping into?
Back then, none. I had none, and I wasn't doing any of that. That was more our foreign sales agent and EP who was going that direction with it. I was I was taking notes and reworking the script and sitting in all the meetings, and I just learned a ton because again, this wasn't my background. I came from the acting world, but so this time, and actually it was my EP that said, who wasn't on it this time because she works at a higher budget level, but she said, Rainy, just make it. And she said this to me years ago in a time where I didn't know, like, just make it. I mean, literally, I think I went to my computer, like, how to make a movie. Like, it was like I had to start somewhere. So it got shelved, and then, I had this sort of fearless moment in my life, and I decided to take the project back and heed her words and just make it. So I was like, okay, I'll do a crowdfunding campaign. That sounds easy. The Midwest will fund my film $1 at a time. And it was successful, but it was not, that's not the case, The bulk of crowdfunding comes from your circle and once removed. So it was a long process, but that gave us our first seed money, and it legitimized us because there was this campaign video with me where it said, Rainy Kerwin, writer-director, on screen, and I was talking about myself, and I was now a writer-director because it said so.
That's right.
And Indiegogo we were successful, and we were on a legitimate platform, and so that somehow parlayed me to getting the next 5 investors on board, who don't ask me how I did it. Some people have asked me how. I'm like, I don't know. I put it out on this, and then somebody saw it on this, and then a friend of a friend heard about an all-female something, and it just it came to be. And I'm not saying it was easy. I just kept saying, I'm going to make this film. I don't know how I'm going to make this film, and finally it got funded, and we did.
Well, I guess the idea of just as long as you keep putting something out there, you don't know who is ever going to see it. So,
right.
So that just putting it out there, that increases the chances of something happening exponentially, as opposed to like, well, we'll just sit here and talk about something we could do.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you're so during this whole experience, how's your view of the industry changed now? Before, when you first started off, did you have more of a, I don't want to say like rose-colored glasses about the industry, but now seeing just everything that's involved in trying to actually get a film made, has it kind of changed your perspective on it?
Yeah, I will never say anything bad about anyone's movie again. Like, just knowing how much work it is to get that on the screen, it floors me. It floors me that we're here. But it also, the amount of times, because I refer to it as a baby, and I was just trying not to kill it. And there's so many opportunities to drop the baby, where it's like, done, didn't happen, Like, it's, this fell apart, we're not going to get past this, we don't have the money for this, and so I'm so grateful that along the way in this, during post, I was the post-production supervisor, but I was working, it would be me and the editor, and then me and the colorist, and me and sound, and me. So I worked with all these people that were great in their field. But in terms of rose-colored glasses for the industry, I don't have them. I don't know that I did before. I don't know that I work in the industry. I'm very much on the outskirts of Hollywood. I exist in this independent film world. Like, this is a massive, wonderful, loving community where you say you're a first-time director and it's a badge of honor, versus I feel like the traditional Hollywood that's frowned upon, so I feel that this community is I've just been immersed in it, and I do favors, people do me favors, and it's a great space to be in. But I haven't really worked in the Hollywood industry, and I don't really know what that's like. I remember years ago, Quentin Tarantino said, he said, I was so not in the industry that the joke was, if you wanted to write a letter to me, just address it to me and write on the outskirts of Hollywood, and it would get to me. And I feel like, well, he's not there now. He's on the inskirts, but that's where I feel like I am. I'm just sort of independently doing what I like. And I guess with no studio over me, I didn't have to take out the mustache scene, which
that's right.
I'm sure would not have flown with any studio.
Oh, come on, that's a great scene. But doing all this, do you realize that now there are so many different platforms to showcase a project?
Yeah.
That maybe the Hollywood system, as growing up, that we kind of learned about and read about, doesn't quite exist in the same way anymore. That you don't have to really rely on, like, I've got to get into the fast track of the Hollywood system to be successful, to have a career, to be able to show my work to people who would like to watch it.
Yeah, I think there's so many people that do work successfully on the outskirts of Hollywood. I'm such a fan of the Duplass brothers. Aside from being a fan of their work, I'm just a fan of who they are and how they exist. And I know they're in the Hollywood world, but they're also, they EP a lot of stuff on the outskirts and continue to move that kind of art forward. So, and in terms of platforms, I have a friend who's a film called Odd Brodsky, and she released it, she distributed it on her own. So she's windowing, so the first window was iTunes, and the next window is Amazon, and so there is a place for this stuff now, this content. It's just a matter of how you get eyes on it and how you rise above, and because we're what we don't have, we do have a lot as independent filmmakers. We have the opportunity to put these scenes in the film and cast who we want and work in that world, but what we don't have and what we lack, and equipment is cheap and cameras are cheap, like you can make good quality stuff, but we don't have the money for marketing, and that's where we get separated. That's where we work so hard to get, the festival circuit. I was on it for a year and it was great, but I mean, you work your butt off on that circuit, and that's where we fall short, not being able to get eyes on it, or relying on some great, maybe it's the show today. Maybe we will explode on this show today.
That's right. I'm a tastemaker, everybody. You heard it here first. So you mentioned casting. Now, what was it like? Certainly you've been an actor going into auditions. Mm-hmm. Now you're running the cast room. You're in there. You're scheduling these appointments for everybody to come into audition. What did
so unglamorous. Yes, I literally am calling like I'm a PA on the. Yeah.
What was it like being on the other side of the camera? How did you want? It's like, you know what? These casting rooms that I've been into as an actor, I want to make sure I don't do this for the actors that are coming in for my project.
I wanted it to be a warm setting. I remember the very last audition I went on. It wasn't That 70s Show because it was a commercial audition, and I went, and it was a great, I don't know what it was for. It was cellular or something. And I got there, and there was nobody in line, which is really weird. And there were sides, and I thought, this is great, something to sink my, because I'm a comedic actor, I'm not the model that, I never booked those, but anyway, so they said, oh, we're ready for you, come on in. I was like, oh great, I'm just gonna read the board and the sides, and they're like, we're ready, it's on the board in there. And I read it cold, and they were like, thank you. And that was like, I didn't even do anything with it, it was like, I was like, and the dog went, and they're like, we got it. I was like, can I do it? No, we got it. And that, I was like, I drove across town and shaved my legs for that, and so I drove straight from there to my commercial agents and quit.
Really?
And I've never been on an audition since then. Yeah, so I wanted to, because I think casting directors go about this two different ways. They either, some want you to suck, and not that they want everybody to suck, but they just want to weed it out to get down to one, right? They need the person to be great too, but it's like a clear-cut decision is always great. So either be amazing or be terrible. And I didn't want that. I wanted everybody to kind of have this opportunity to feel safe in the room. So I think I suck as a casting director in that I'm like pitching the project in the room, like, it's going to be fun on set, but it's like a family. I mean, I said to like Camille and Owen, who came in for it, I remember because Camille sat on the lip of the stage, she came in wearing stilettos because she locked her keys in her car and couldn't get like her flip-flops that she wanted to audition in. So she was in stilettos, and she's like, I'm so sorry, I'm in stilettos. And so after her, she took them off, and then she's sitting on the lip of the stage, and I said, this is a passion project. Like, we're all on board to make this great. So you're gonna definitely change in the back seat of my Prius at some point, and you're definitely gonna hold a flag and lift a C-stand, and like, that's how we're making this film. So it was kind of like the pitch of like, this is fun, before people would even audition. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's how I hired everyone too. It was, they weren't really interviews as much as it was me saying, hey, what am I kicking? Sorry, I'm gonna unplug something. It was me saying like, this is gonna be fun. Do you want to do it? And I feel like, what is this all about? This is what we want to do. We want to make movies. Well, it should be fun. And I thought I was going to see real, true people if I gave them an environment to be safe in. So that was always my goal with everything.
Did you notice the difference in terms of the performances by creating a casting room that gives those actors that kind of chance to feel safe and try something?
Well, who knows? Because I don't know them. I mean, they could have been terrible elsewhere, but just brilliant.
Right there.
I hope so. But I don't really know. But aside from that, I hope that people felt like they got their best performance out. That was really my goal. Just creating that environment where people aren't worried, because a lot of people's intention sometimes is not to get you to pass the salt, but it's to get to the end of the monologue. And so my intention in this room was for them to get what they wanted in the scene, not get to the end of it. So yeah, I hope that people got the salt.
So for you, now being on the casting side of it, when it comes down to, you said the casting directors want somebody to be great or somebody to be just terrible.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to making the decision, was it easy for you to kind of go through all these performances that you had to watch and say like, all right, I know exactly what I want, or is it a struggle to kind of sift through this and decide like, who do I go with?
It was both. I should say 80% of this film is cast with friends. Everybody auditioned. Nobody was given a role. But if I knew who I wanted for this day player role, I would bring only them in, and if they nailed it, they got it. And I also wanted to see if I could work with them, if so a lot of that happened like that. But 20% of this, sometimes we struggled and sometimes it was super obvious. Like Camille was super obvious. I mean, I should even tell you, so I was going to be Ryan, and so I want to say 2 or 3 weeks out, we weren't finding our Lucy or the name, and I talked to my other producing partners. I said, I think I need to be Lucy, and expecting them to kind of push back a little bit, I'd put myself on tape, but by myself, I did monologues. So I said, I think I'm Lucy, and this is why. They were like, yeah, I think you're Lucy. So we went with that, but then we needed a Ryan. And I guess what had happened was because at the time Camille was also coaching at a different school, and one of her students had come in and said, I just auditioned for this. She actually said good things about the audition, so maybe we should have a good time. But she said it's an all-female crew, and I really hope I get it. Camille was like, just clock that, okay. And so she said it took her 2 weeks to call. She found my email address, and she emailed me, and she said, are you still auditioning? And at the time, I had stepped out of Ryan into Lucy, and I was like, well, this one role, but I don't know if you're right for it, but if you want to come in, and which is amazing because Camille Guadi is redonkulous, and she's been in the business long enough to have like not that long, but long enough to have like this amazing career and this amazing following, and she's exactly the type of person that we would not have been able to get in the room had we gone the traditional route, just to her agent. It would have been offer only. Well, her team is really great, so maybe not, but it makes sense. Like, it's a first-time director, but she came to us, and we wouldn't, knock on glass that she did.
So when you actually start shooting this film, of course, scouting plays a huge role. So for somebody that loves Los Angeles as much as you do, when it goes around to scouting a film, was it easy to go like, I've already been in my mental Rolodex, the locations that if I ever shot a film, I'd want to use these spots? Or was it kind of a struggle figuring out like, what do I want to use for my film?
I think a lot of them I did know. Like, I was writing this film, I started writing this like 10 years ago, and at the time I was working at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in Beverly Hills. So those were my and then that's where we shot. We shot at the one in Woodland Hills. They gave it to me for free.
Oh, that's awesome.
So amazing. Yes. We shot there 2 nights, but in my mind, like, I knew how that bathroom scene happened, and I knew how that bar scene happened, and just because everything, that's how I had written it. So that all made sense. And so other stuff, I think kind of evolved over time, and then other stuff was just cold calling. And I mean, I spent several days on the street walking around, knocking on doors for some places. But then we shot at my godparents' house, the opening sequence, overlooking the ocean there. That's beautiful. It's beautiful. They since moved to Ojai, which is beautiful too. But so that was all there. And luckily my godmother had most of those trinkets and stuff. And I mean, I think it's really important with production value. If you're doing an independent film, you really have to cast rich. You have to cast these locations that are rich in production value and feel as much as possible. That being said, again, our production designer had an empty gym to create an 80s prom-themed wedding out of. So, I mean, there's times where you do have to put the budget in there, but I think when you can steal as much as you can from the actual location, you're just much better off.
That's so. What I like about that opening scene, though, as we see her writing the invitations and stuff, she draws her finger over the cupcake.
Yeah.
And then she's touching the. Is she wiping her finger on the napkin there for that? As I felt like I was reading, it's like, is she just kind of like, I'm just gonna wipe my own finger.
That's so funny. Well, as you know, it wasn't shot in sequence, but we could ask her. Kara, a good friend of mine, Denise Masterson.
So now you've got one of the girls that stars in the film with you, Nectar, is the character.
Yeah.
That is such a interesting name for. Where did that come from?
You know what? It's actually a friend of mine's friend. Her name is Nectar, and it just seemed to fit because it was kind of kind of this kind of hippie, kind of cool, everything turns out for you kind of name, and that's who Nectar is. And I leave it sort of open. Did she change her name to Nectar when she became a model, or was that her name? That's sort of up for her or the audience to decide. But I think it just fit her. It was Nectar McAllister. Yeah.
And the whole inciting incident is that there's a wedding invitation for a big 80s themed prom wedding.
Yeah.
Which admittedly I have not been to a lot of prom weddings. Are themed weddings like a big thing?
I don't know.
Yeah, so it's like this, or just an idea like, yeah, this is really cool. Let's have an 80s themed wedding because I love the 80s music. Let's do it.
Yeah, I love 80s music too. I think part of it was, so much of this you don't realize when you're making the film, but I did an interview and I think I was like, this is what I did. I thought of my influences because I'm hugely influenced by John Hughes movies. And I grew up with those movies, so I wanted that Pretty in Pink prom scene or a dance scene at the end of it. Or no, it is a prom, but, in 16 Candles, like that feel. So I thought that would be really fun. Here's a crazy story. I screened this film at the South Dakota Film Festival, and they bring in a couple celebrities. They fly them in, and Anthony Michael Hall from 16 Candles and everything else in the 80s was there, and he was the celebrity guest, and he sat in front of me at the screening, and it was just this very weird, surreal moment. And afterwards, we had this moment after, and he gave me this incredible advice, and it was like, wait, you are, I didn't model my film after him, but you're like a part of that era, that decade that I was trying to create. And there he was sitting in front of me laughing, maybe he was laughing at me. But either way, it was
Absolutely.
good. I didn't know.
That's going to be, because that's basically just one step removed from just hearing words of wisdom from John Hughes as well, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, as you're coming up with this story for these women, it's 3 women who are just basically using this wedding as a way to basically kind of change the way that they're living their life, kind of be, kind of be more on, be more aggressive in the things that they want in their lives. When you're coming up with the characters, did you want to make sure that I'm going to have Lucy be marketing? We have Ryan, just kind of she's a waitress, server at a restaurant, and then Nectar, she's a model. Did you want to make sure that you wanted to have 3 characters from kind of 3 different professions?
Well, very different from who they were. And I think they kind of in the spectrum of money, Ryan is broke, barely making ends meet. Lucy's doing well, and then Nectar's doing very well. And these were kind of the spectrum of the 3 girls. But the reason I wanted them to be so different is, I was also, when I was writing this, I was late to the game. I was watching Sex and the City, and I fell in love with it. And I originally had 4 characters and voiceover. I think I was just recreating Sex and the City early on. But that was, I wanted to have these characters that I'm a Miranda, no, I'm a Carrie, that people would relate to. That was really important to me, that the characters felt real and had real conversations, and so somebody could find who they were in these people. And it's not just the financial spectrum. You might be Ryan but be hugely successful, but that's how you exist and speak and talk and live. And then I had somebody one time tell me that, you only ever write what you know, and your characters are always some part of yourself. And I think that's really true, because I'd written Lucy for myself, and that's sort of my, obsessive compulsive side, highlighter, happy, and post-it notes. But then, I play I'm terrible at all sports, but I shouldn't say that. I'm fine at sports, but I play them all. Like, I have a surfboard, I have a baseball glove, I have golf clubs. I'm like that kind of, I have a trucker mouth when I'm, on the field with baseball, and then I'm more polite like Lucy when I'm here with you. But it's the spectrum of my character. And then I also have this spiritual side that's, that hopes things turn out well, and they do, and that's kind of Lucy, but then also very Nectar too, and like, things are great, let's do that, this will work out.
One thing I like with that is that during the course of the film you use title cards with different sayings from people, and I do like about midway through where it's like if first you don't try, if you don't succeed, try again. So everybody and their brother.
It's an official person. That's funny, because I know what they say, so I'm always waiting for. And then it gets the laugh, after in the theater. It's kind of funny to see. But, those weren't, Wait, sorry. Was there a question? Sorry.
So in terms of coming, were those things that have kind of stuck with you, or do you have to go do research on? I'm going to look for sayings that kind of fit into what I want to add into the script.
These are all saying. Most of them I knew and love and use, but I think I sat down and had to figure out which ones fit. They weren't in the original script. I actually had a different device there. I had created a game board. Or a board game, and I had these pawns, and so this hand would come in, and it was the chapel you were getting. It was like a Candyland board game.
Oh, cool! And
so they were like, when they figured out what the game was, we have 5 days to get there. They started on Monday, so the pawns were put down on Monday. It was all these kind of insert shots, and that was kind of telling what the next scene was going to be, or leading out of the last scene, depending. And then they would move to Tuesday, but Ryan got drunk and threw up, so the hand would move them like this. But it didn't play. And in the end, it was kind of like, well, what is the theme of this whole thing? And she loves her mantras and her positive quotes, and it just felt like the right thing to do to place it throughout. I mean, essentially, the movie doesn't need it. I was just kind of adding another poppy element to it to again cohesive, and to bring a little bit more Lucy into these moments.
It was like there were many in there that I had never read before, so that was really cool.
Yeah.
So I did enjoy that. So now we've talked about, of course, the film. You've reached the end of it now, and you're finally gonna have to take a little time off.
Yeah.
How soon are you ready to jump back in to the next project?
That's funny. I just went to Cannes, and I was meeting with people there about the next project. So I guess I have another one foot in the next project. But I think soon. I just I can't do it the same way I did this one. Like, it's set up to be a much different budget level, and I'll have more people on board during all stages, because it was just harrowing to play all these roles. And listen, not on set. On set, I was hooked up, cast and crew, like amazing. But you pay them till the end of production, and then you're on post on your own. So I am ready to do that. I'm just putting the foundation together before I fully move forward on that. But yeah.
So for somebody that is so heavily involved and so organized, are you going to be able to take your time off for the next 3 weeks and not think about this film, or is it always going to be constantly running in the back of your head no matter what?
Well, that's funny. Because the truth is, on this road trip, I'm doing a couple of scheduled interviews, and then when I get to Winnipeg, I'm doing 3. So
all right.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think energetically, like Lucy would say, I mean, I have to just like let it have its life now. I can't change it in any way. It has to go, and me clinging to it is not good. So I feel like it's gotten out there in a big way, and I'm just keep on let my baby grow up.
Absolutely, and much like Nearver Dallas, you never know who may see it. All of a sudden, Tom Hanks, Rita Wilson see it, and all of a sudden, more opportunities and bigger doors start opening for you.
Yeah.
So, Rainy, if people want to continue to follow both you and everything about the Wedding Invitation, what's the best place to follow you on social media?
So funny, because I never even do me. I'm always about the film. But the Wedding Invitation is Wedding INV Movie. At Wedding INV Movie, and so that's our handle for everything. And then our website is weddinginvitationmovie.com. And then I'm at Rainy Kerwin on everything.
We got to follow you too, because it's, after the Wedding Invitation is out, which go see the film when it. But also she's going to have other projects coming up too. So we got to
think of this, because I truly I probably have like a couple hundred followers. Like, I just never push that.
No.
Okay.
Now let's get her more than that. Let's get her more than that, everybody. Yes, she's going to be documenting her road trip, I'm sure. A lot of great swimming, a lot of great photos, walking with the dog. Uncle Frank, we're going to get him maybe in a Speedo, maybe? No? We don't want Uncle Frank in a Speedo?
Let's not end on that. Say something else.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Wedding Invitation is going to be,
It's out as of June 6th, so on every VOD platform you can imagine, you can get it.
Absolutely. Go see it. Just for the scene that Rainy was alluding to earlier, too. It just starts with a basketball game and ends not in a way that you're expecting, but it's delightful. Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, my guest has been Rainy Kerwin. Make sure you follow her on social media. Let's get those followers up. Check out the Wedding Invitation as well. I've been your host, Frank Moran. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HappyGoJackie. We'll see you back here with another guest soon here on AfterBuzz TV with another episode of Spotlight On. Take care.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.